Good evening. We are here today to discuss the relationship between Israel and the diaspora. My name is Nurit Canetti. I'm happy to host this discussion. We're privileged to have with us Ms. Gusti Yehoshua Braverman. Ms. Braverman is the head of the Diaspora Affairs Department in the World Zionist Organization. Also with us, Mr. Dani Dayan, former Israeli Consul General in New York, who had finished his term before returning home only a month ago. Welcome home, Dani.
Thank you.
Before I introduce our speakers, I want to tell you a bit about myself. I'm an Israeli journalist. I'm an anchorwoman and editor-in-chief in Galei Tzahal, Israel's public army radio. And also, I'm a co-creator of a podcast called Am Israel Live, The Bridge Between Israel and Diaspora. It's a Hebrew podcast. And now, I'll introduce our speakers today. So, Ms. Gusti Yehoshua Braverman is head of the Department of Diaspora Affairs in World Zionist Organization. Previously, she served as the Associate Director of the Israel Movement for Reform and Progressive Judaism. Gusti is a member of the WZO Executive, member of the Jewish Agency Board of Governors, the BOG, and the chair of the Small Jewish Communities Committee in the BOG, serves as a board member of the Poultry Council in Israel, board member of Ayelet, the Federation of Non-Olympic Sport in Israel, board member of the National Council to commemorate Herzl, board member of Ladat, Choose Well, the organization for the promotion of sexual health and education, and is an active volunteer in other organizations, member of the board of Kehilat Mevaseret Zion, of the Israel Movement of Reform and Progressive Judaism. She's married to Yoram, and they are parents of 3 children. And Mr. Dani Dayan was the Consul General of Israel in New York from August 2016 till August 2020. He was accredited to 5 U.S. states, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Delaware, an area in which 45% of Americans Jews reside. Dayan was for more than 2 decades a successful business entrepreneur in the information technology area. He was for 6 years the chairman of the Yesha Council, and he was born in Buenos Aires, Argentina. So, shall we begin?
Yes.
Dani,
Yeah.
you arrived in New York as a politically conservative Israeli. As we said in the past, you were the chairman of Yesha Council of Judea and Samaria settlers, where lots of members believe that there is no legitimacy for Jews to live outside of Israel. Shlilat hagalut. Jews should live in Israel. Maybe you can describe for us your insights in regard to world Jewry during your term.
Well, first of all, I am not sure I agree with the word conservative. I think I consider myself actually a staunch liberal. And I will reveal to you and to our viewers a secret, probably contrary to what usually happens. As I grow older, I become more and more liberal. I'm a staunch supporter of LGBTQ rights. I am a staunch supporter of religious pluralism. I was and I still am. I don't think that New York in that sense changed me. New York probably gave me opportunity to express better those views. Now to your question, Nurit, it's very interesting what happened to me. I made Aliyah in 1971 when I was a teenager, and from Buenos Aires, Argentina, as you mentioned. Now, when I arrived to New York, I've been to New York many, many times, probably 20 or 30 times. And when I arrived to New York in 2016 to serve as Israel's Consul General, as Israel's top diplomat there, I had a feeling of déjà vu. And it took me quite a while to understand why. Because it was not a déjà vu to walking the Fifth Avenue or strolling Central Park. No, it was something completely different. And I couldn't pinpoint what makes me feel déjà vu. And suddenly I understood. I was reminded of my childhood in Argentina, in Buenos Aires as a Jew. I was reminded of a feeling of being a Jew outside of Israel. And it was a very, in some sense, it was a very comfortable feeling because I felt very comfortable as a Jew in Argentina.
You know this feeling, something that we Israelis don't really know.
Exactly. I forgot it because for 50 years I was in Israel. But for me, it was a very telling experience. And now look, I am a Zionist. I am if I have to define myself, I am a non-observant, staunch Zionist. I sometimes say that my religion is Zionism. And as a Zionist, a staunch Zionist, an ultra-Orthodox Zionist, I, of course, believe that every Jew has to, the proper place to every Jew is in Israel. But I'm also a realist.
But then you met...
I am a realist. That's exactly the point. I am a realist and I understand that we are not going to have millions of olim in the next years, if at all. And we have a responsibility as the Jewish, we are the Jews, the state of the Jews, not the state of the Israelis. As the state of the Jews, we are also responsible for our brethren across the ocean. And it was for me completely natural to become linked, even emotionally, sentimentally linked to the Jews of every single denomination in New York and the areas I covered.
Something has changed in the way you treat world Judaism after the term you served?
Probably. There is no doubt that now it's, if I can say, it's in my guts. It's in my kishkas, as you say in English. My feeling of Jewish solidarity always existed. But now I feel it much deeper than I did before I served in New York. I became very, very connected to the community there and elsewhere.
We'll get back to the solidarity issue. Gusti, in the spirit of Slichot Days, this event is about Slichot Days, what in your view should Israeli society ask to be forgiven for from world Jewry? And also maybe you can tell us where and if you think, Jews in the diaspora should be searching their soul in regard to their attitude to Israel and Israelis.
I want, first of all, to react to something. You are breaking all the stereotypes that we have in the Israeli society and elsewhere. I want to start by saying this.
About ultra-Orthodox, about settlers.
About settlers. We tend to divide. We have stereotypes, even if we are liberal Jews. I might say, and you know what? Even for this, it's important to hear it in Israel and outside of Israel. So, again, every time I learn something. But maybe this is the reason for us to understand about forgiveness and so on. When it came to Chodesh HaSlichot this month, Elul, actually I started thinking about connection, Israel-Diaspora. And I want to share with you something that I heard last week. I convened a meeting, a Zoom meeting, of course, with the Minister of Diaspora Affairs, with Omer Yankelevich. And it was only with small communities. And one of them from, it's not that small, from Holland, she actually expressed what you were asking, what we have to why we should ask for forgiveness. She said, it's hard to be a Jew, no matter where we live, and it resonates to what you were saying about being a minority. It's even harder when you know that the state of Israel is not respectful to the streams, to women's rights. We know we are not really egalitarian, because while men can serve as rabbis, women cannot serve as rabbis, even in the Orthodox arena. I'm not saying about the Reform and the conservatives, but this is something that I think that the Israeli society and the politicians do not understand about Jews, because at the end of the day, when you are a Jew living in the diaspora, people are expecting you to defend Israel, and they do. And they feel tired about this. One of the people were saying, when you sneeze in Israel, catch a cold in wherever you live. So this is something that the Israeli society don't understand about being a Jew in the diaspora. And when there are, advertisements that saying if you are about reform and the conservatives and delegitimize these streams and the right to be part of the Jewish people. And you were saying rightly, Israel is the state of the Jewish people. And the definition who is the Jew is much more wider because the world is changing. And the fact, I think that the Israeli society do need to have some kind of remorses about the way that they treat the Jewish diaspora.
I think they have remorses? You think they understand?
No, they need to have.
They need to have.
Alvai they will have, but no, not really. I think this is one. On the other hand, what I can tell you is that Jews in the diaspora, one of the things that it was my mission, and I assume that it was also your mission, they tend not to divide, to make the differentiation between the Israel as the Jewish state and the political arena in Israel.
Yes.
And therefore they shy away, they distance themselves, and this is one of the things that they need to understand. Israel is not about only politics, right, left, orthodox, non-orthodox. Israel stands for something bigger than political situation in Israel.
Very, very interesting. You said that Dani is taught you something because he's not like the stereotype of a settler of an ultra-Orthodox. So I want to ask you if you think you represent a wide approach in your people between the settlers and ultra-Orthodox in Israel.
I'm not. I'm ultra-Orthodox Zionist. I'm not an Orthodox in the religious sense. The opposite. I am quite. As I said, almost totally non-observant. But I don't know. It's a statistical question.
But you speak to people.
Yeah,
you talk to people. You have friends. You have neighbors.
I know that the population, the Jewish population in Judea and Samaria is roughly 3 equal thirds. 1/3 is what we call in Israel Chilonim, seculars. 1/3 is religious Zionists, and 1/3 is ultra-Orthodox, Haredim. I belong to the first third, so I am not alone in that sense. Whether my positions on social issues are widely shared, I think that quite widely. I think that, again, stereotypes
Is this a process? It's something that is quite new in the past, like 10, 20 years, or it's something that's...
I know, Nurit, that you studied Jewish history, and I am an amateur in Jewish history, but I know that actually that is Zev Jabotinsky's legacy, a legacy of, if to use modern terms, hawkish security policy or hawkish political in the positions in the conflict with our neighbors, but liberalism on civil issues. I think that to the largest extent is also Menachem Begin's legacy.
So what's made Israel such conservative politically and religiously when she looks out to the Jews in diaspora and into world Jewry?
What made it?
Yes. If it's the spirit of Begin and it's the spirit of Jabotinsky and a lot of the people you're a settler and you were the head of Yesha Council and you said, yes, I have friends that are looking at this topic in a liberal way.
I assume that what made for me possible to be chairman of the Yesha Council is the fact that the Yesha Council members share positions on certain issues, but can have different opinions on other issues that are not relevant to the mission of Yesha. But that what you said and what Gusti said brings me to the following point. We are different. Jewish Israelis and Jewish Americans are different. Yes, Israelis are more conservative. American Jews are more liberal. if I have to define what is the most central Jewish values for the Israeli Jewry, the Israeli Jewish community, if I can use that term, I think it's Shivat Zion, the return to Zion, to create here a Jewish society, Jewish state. For American Jews, is Tikkun Olam, is to repair the world, to make the world a better place. And the challenge that we have is not to hide the difference that we have between us. That is almost natural because we developed our characteristics with different strategies. We had to create a Jewish society. They had to blend into an existing society. We don't have to hide the differences. We have to create a bridge that starts in the Israeli Jewry and ends in the American Jewry, the world Jewry, despite those differences, to understand that we are different, nevertheless we are brothers.
So how, Gusti, can we unite? In your vision, how can we unite between Shivat Zion and maybe even Shlilat HaGalut, the non-legitimacy of Jews not to live here, and Tikkun Olam of world Jewry? Maybe we can do something to combine these values because they're not clashing.
They're not clashing, and moreover, I think one of the things that I want to say about what you were saying, you are a mixture of North America and South America. And we tend in Israel to forget that there is...
also Israel.
Israel, it's the base. But what I'm saying, it's because the tendency in the Israeli society is to look only to the American yes, it's the largest one. Yes. But at the same time, we have in Latin America, we have in Europe it's quite different, and we need to keep it in mind. It's not only North America, though this is the tendency. It's part of the bilateral relationship and so on. But this is something that it's important that we in Israel will remember. It's about the resources and the attitude. Going back to what you were asking, Shlilat HaGalut is not relevant anymore. This is a fact of life. The world is changing. And sticking to the same slogans as in the past, we will lose them. This is part of the challenge that we are having in the Israeli society. Because if you define a Zionist, only one that is considering making Aliyah, and I would like to open a parenthesis, saying something about Tzionut Datit, religious Zionism. In the past, in order to divide or to differentiate between those that were Orthodox Tzionim and those that were anti-Tzionim, you would say Dati Leumi, national religion. And today, all of a sudden, it was combined into one. What does it say about Zionism? To whom it belongs? This is something that I feel that we need to redefine, because Zionism, in my eyes, it's something that it's not a religious matter. It's a matter of the way that you feel towards the state of Israel. Zionism, in my eyes, is the fact that no matter where you live, you have Israel as part of your identity. What worries me is the fact that more and more Jews would tend to speak about, and you face it in the United States more, would tend to speak about Jewish identity and less about Zionist identity and the connections to the state of Israel. So I think that the more we understand that we need to embrace those that decided to live wherever they decide to live and to respect their decision, at the same time to provide them a bridge, a connection, a safe venue to express their feelings towards Israel, more we will secure the next generation. And we need the notion that the Jewish people had changed. They are not the same as it was, even not before 20 years ago, or not to mention 70 years ago. So for me, this is what we need to do. This is what we do in the Department for Diaspora Affairs. This is what you did as represent, and I'm sure they were shocked to meet, as they are shocked to meet me, representing a national institution and expressing a different way of mutual respect. If I need to underline something, is to have mutual respect. This is something that we need really to work very hard in order to regain the trust of Jews.
You say mutual respect, and you talked about the solidarity. And something that I don't think has changed yet is that it is well known that while the Jews around the world are very involved in what is happening in Israel, Israelis are not very connected, maybe not even aware of what is happening to Jews around the world in usual normal times, and moreover in the challenging times of Corona. Mr. Dayan, have you witnessed, while serving in New York, mounting complaints or of expressions of frustration in the communities to the indifference of Israel and Israeli public?
Unfortunately, that's an accurate description. I think that if we go now out to the streets here in Jerusalem or in Tel Aviv, in a kibbutz or in a settlement, in a development town or a big city, and we stop 10 people and ask them, what are the top 10 issues, public issues that interest you? Not even one will say the relations with the diaspora Jews, with the world Jewry, and that, in my view, is a tragedy. Look, I will tell you, I ask myself very frequently whether in our contemporary Jewish generation we have an extra mitzvah, an extra obligation that is particular to our time. For instance, in the 40s, both American and Palestine Jews had the extra mitzvah to try to save the European Jewry from extermination. They failed, probably. I'm not judging, probably it was impossible to succeed. Then there was the extra mitzvah to liberate the Soviet Jewry, the Ethiopian Jewry, and we succeeded, Americans and Israelis, in doing that. What about these days? I don't think we have something as clear as those days, but I think we have two extra mitzvahs. The first one is to guarantee the existence of the State of Israel. Not just the existence as a robust, secure, thriving country, state. And the second, and yes, I'm saying it as a Zionist, and I agree with what Gusti said earlier, is to guarantee the continuity of Jewish life in every place in which Jews reside. And my fear...
But does it necessarily connect it to Israel?
That's right. But my fear is that each one of the two big Jewish communities, Israel and America, will choose only one of those mitzvot. We Israelis will choose exclusively the maintaining our state, and will neglect helping world Jewry to maintain their Judaism, and vice versa. The American Jews will put all their efforts in their Judaism, their different expressions of Judaism, etc., and will neglect helping Israel not only survive, as I said, but supporting Israel. And I think if that will happen, will be a tragedy. And it may happen. I mean, the danger of that happening exists, and I think that one of the policy issues an Israeli government should strive for is exactly preventing that. And if I may, one additional sentence. What worries me is not the headline about our relationships that we will read tomorrow in the Forward in New York or in the Jerusalem Post here. What worries me is what we will read in the Jewish history book that will be written 50, 70, 100 years from now. And if we will read either that the Jewish people split into two tribes unconnected, or worse than that, that one of those tribes disappeared, I think we were really guilty of that.
But you know, it's pretty amazing. We're sitting here in the offices of the World Zionist Organization, and there are much more Jewish institutions, and still Jewish communities around the world feels that Israel doesn't do enough for them, and that the public in Israel don't care for them. So what the Jewish institutions are doing?
I want to say something that in regard to this time of the year. In October 2020, there will be the next Congress. This is the Zionist Congress. This is the largest gathering of the Jewish people. This is the parliament of the Jewish people. And when you read the newspapers, and it's horrifying in my eyes, because until now it was a consensus that it should be a coalition from wall to wall. All of a sudden, the politics penetrate the national institution, and the so-called the threat that the right wing will take over everything, not leaving any space to the half part of the Jewish people, should be a red line not to cross. And if you are asking me, this is a very, very bad sign to the Jews that are living outside of Israel. So it's not about a local politics.
Because it become a political issue?
And what is the message? What is the message to the Jews that are not on the right wing? What is the message when you say a coalition wall to wall is not relevant anymore? We are divided. This is exactly what Dani is saying. This is the threat. By saying this, but leading us into this, that it will be a split in the national institution that were established with the aim to bring together the entire Jewish people. This is a bad sign, and we need to stop it. And I hope that everybody will come to a conclusion that we cannot allow ourselves to split ourselves and to turn apart the Jewish world into right and left.
Dani, you see the same danger?
I read the newspapers. I'm not as involved as Gusti is on those matters, but I assume I know only from the media, from the news about the development.
But is it something that bothers Jews around the world? I mean, maybe in Israel nobody really knows about this, but
I don't know. It's an issue that really started when I was already here in Israel, so I'm really not involved in that. But I agree that everything that jeopardizes Jewish solidarity and creates wedges in a time in which we need more unity is a negative development.
So, speaking about the Jewish institutions, which are mostly politically and religiously conservative, even before this political taking over that you were describing, that is ahead. How deep you see the clash between the spirit of the Jewish institutions, which is, as we said, is quite conservative, and the directions that the Jews around the world have chosen to pursue?
I want just to make a clarification. Conservative, it's something that has to do in the public opinion. They know it as a stream in Judaism.
Yeah, I know. This is why I'm describing it as a politically and religiously.
So it's important to understand those institutions are far away from being conservative or reform, and there is a clash. There is a clash in the way that we look at this. As we were mentioning before, there are those that will say, don't put a shekel or a dollar in something that will not bring people to the state of Israel. I had a very good example only a month ago, Yom Yerushalayim. It was, all the rallies here next to us, and the demonstrations, and we invited Achinoam Nini. Achinoam Nini is an Israeli singer.
She's known as Noah.
She's known as Noah, very opinionated, in a left way, and she expressed herself. At the same time, she's very Zionist. Her kids are going to the army. She feels very much about the state of Israel, and she's a spokesperson of the state of Israel.
I hosted her in New York.
Okay, and you know what I'm talking about. She brought a lot of kavod to the state of Israel, but everything is now colored with a political way, in a political way. So I got lots of emails saying, "How dare you? How dare you invite Noah? She's anti-Zionist." Only because she dared saying something that was not popular in the eyes of others. So eventually I invited her. We had tens of thousands on the Zoom. And it was a good sign for the liberal parts of the Jewish people to say, Judaism, Israel belongs to the entire Jewish people, and therefore what I'm saying, though it's a coalition from wall to wall, there should be a better work in order to make this half part welcomed, entitled to express their own opinions, even though it is not aligned completely with the politics, the policy of the State of Israel. This is the only way, this is what we are doing in the department, is to allow the discourse, to allow the conflict, to allow people to voice their opinion with one aim, to keep them connected to the State of Israel. It's about our future. And this is the only way, and I agree with you, Dani, and what you did, again, it was the way to connect them, is not to blame them, not to judge them, not to say anything about their...
Not to patronize them, maybe?
And this is another thing. One of the things that we, and I know it was your experience as well, we are patronizing those that are living in other places, and it's about time that we will give up on this. And again, it's not to blur the differences, but to accept that we can and we should respect each other to create a better future.
What is your vision, Dani? How can we turn the Israeli society, the public, and of course the official Israel, to embrace the Jews around the world?
I think that there are three ways to do it: education, education, and education. We have to educate Israelis. I read a few weeks ago a speech by Menachem Begin in 1948. Wow. And he had three slogans there. One is politically incorrect these days, that the Jordan is not the border of Eretz Israel, meaning Shtei Gadot, the two banks of the Jordan, but the second already happened. The walls of the old city are not the border of Jerusalem. We already achieved that. And the third was very interesting. The sea is not the border of our people. And we have to educate. The children has to come out from the Israeli educational system with the feeling that he's not only has 9 million Israelis, but he belongs also to a people of 15 million, 16 million that has brothers and sisters in America, in Australia, and Argentina. And right now it doesn't happen. We have to educate. If there is one thing that I am horrified by, is the crisis of Jewish education in America. I am the product of probably I'm a bad product, but I am the product of the amazing Jewish educational system that existed in Argentina during my childhood. And you can one generation without Jewish education, 2 generations, when you are 3 and 4 generations, it's terrible.
You know, there was a big argument in Israel a few weeks ago about one parliament member, Teila Friedman. She said that Israel should spend money and to help the Jewish education in the United States. And people said from all political wings, from left and right, they said, what? We are in problems here, we have economical problem, we don't have to give them money. So what do you think?
I believe in the biblical passage, Shomer Achi Anochi, I am my brother's keeper, in that sense too. It's not only a question of money, it's also a question of attitude. Let's start with an attitude and later find the budget. And to educate about our common bonds. So those 3 types of education are lacking. All 3 of them are in crisis, and we have to invest on all 3 of them.
Gusti, what is your vision?
I agree. I agree it's about education and education and education. I disagree with the decision that was taken not to support Jewish education, because one of the things that you know and I know is that getting Jewish education is very expensive. And knowing what is the economical situation, not only in Latin America, but also in the United States, if a parent needs to make a decision, then it's to prioritize. He or she will not send their children to get Jewish education.
I remember a young Reform rabbi that I'm sure you know him very, very well, was in my office, and he told me, look, Dani, I have 3 kids. Of course I want to send them to Jewish education, but how can I afford that?
Exactly. Exactly. And I can tell you one of the things that I've learned while in one of my visits in New York, I went to a public school, a Greek school. The Greek government that actually is broken decided to give money for a Greek education in the United States with the idea one day they will grow up and they will pay back to the Greek government. So with this notion, if the Israeli government will understand that it's a long-term investment.
The shlichim of the Histadrut HaTzionit is not enough? It's not...
I want to tell you something about this. Because when you are a shaliach, you can get something. We developed a program. It is called Mochileros. I don't know if you know about it. With the idea, lots of young Israelis are traveling the world.
Not now, but usually.
Usually, and they spend lots of time wandering the world, but they don't stop even not for 1 second to get to know the Jewish communities. So we offer twice a year a program that is called Mochileros with the idea that they will serve in a Jewish community, a small Jewish community. The idea was, it was for them, not only for the Jewish community, because this is about Shlichim. It's not about the Jewish community to learn more about Israel, but what it did to those young people that came back with a better notion about what does it mean to be a minority? What does it mean to not to be part of something that is bigger than yourself? So again, it goes back to what Dani was saying rightly. It is about education. It's educating, putting money in Israel. We have a program with the Mechinot Gdam Tzvayot. They don't know about the streams. And they get everything from the TV, exactly as how the Jewish community are getting their impression from
those mechinot are educational program for
elite.
Yes, for people before they go to the army. They're 18. Yeah. They finished school here,
and they are the elite, the cream of the youth in Israel, and they are ignorant about the streams, about the diaspora, and so on. So without a heavy investment in education here and in the world, I'm afraid, as you said, the history will not look good at us.
Okay. Dani, do you think there is still a chance to amend the relationship with the youngsters that feels that due to political issues that Israel is alienating them?
Yeah, I think that there is. I think that we spoke a lot about the liberal Jews and reform and conservative, but let's not forget that there is also a large Orthodox community in the US which invests a lot in education, and their youngsters are committed to Israel and to Judaism, etc. I think that the problem that we have with youngsters in campus and other places, unfortunately, I am not sure there is much we can do. I think my assessment is it has much more to do with the domestic American ideologies than whatever Israel does or doesn't. When I came to serve in New York, I prioritized, in addition to the Jews, I prioritized 3 populations. The Latinos, because I think that our relationship with them is crucial to our future relationship with the American society
in the United
States. The Democrats, I think that we have to be bipartisan, and the millennials and the youngsters. I think that they had a relative success with the first 2. With the millennials, I understood quite quickly that you have to be a millennial yourself in order to. Lucky for me, I had extraordinary millennial diplomats in my consulate general, so they took charge of that. But no doubt that is the most challenging of all the missions that we had.
So we're about to finish our discussion. So I want to ask you, Gusti, as the organizer of this discussion and the events of Slichot Month, I assume that our audience, they know everything about their frustration towards Israel that we all spoke about. So why was it important for you to have this discussion for them? I mean, this discussion should be broadcast in front of Israeli audience, not for the Jews around the world.
You know, you raised, when we had the pre-discussion, you raised this with me. And I must tell you that this is something that actually bothers me. Should it be only, and to say something, it's a message to the Jews, because sitting here and trying to reflect the complexity and so on, it's important. And it's important that they will know that,
that we care.
That we care. Even the fact that we are sitting here, three Israelis, speaking English, not natural, just because it's important for us to express our respect, concern, everything that was said here, it was to say, listen, we didn't forget what is our obligation towards you, and with, again, I will not go to all the phrases that we were saying. But for me, I think that one of the things that I realized after talking to you is that we need to translate it to Hebrew. So it will be online for every Israeli to even to take 5 minutes to look at it, to understand something, and maybe we will screen it at Mechinot and other, so they will understand what we see while we are traveling, what we are saying, what should be part of their education. So if we did it, even, on one hand to send a message to our brothers and sisters around the world. Second, maybe bringing a message into the Israeli society, then it will be a better year next year.
Hopefully. Shana Tova. Dani, would you like to sum up?
I completely agree with Gusti's message, and said that Shomer Achi Anochi, we are our brother's keeper, and that implies the Anashim Achim Anachnu. We are brothers and sisters, we belong to the same people, and what we have in common is much greater than what differentiates us. And Jews and Judaism had many contributions to humanity, but it's agreeing upon ourselves on important matters is not one of them. We can argue, we can have differences of opinion, and still love each other. And if we remember that, I think that we have a bright future.
Thank you. Ms. Gusti Yehoshua Braverman, Mr. Dani Dayan, and you at home, Shana Tova to you all. May next year will be much, much better for all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nurit.
Thank you. Shana Tova.
Shana Tova.
Shana Tova.